All right. Paul, welcome to the Founders Lounge.
Thank you very much for having me, Matisse. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Um, Paul, I'll give a quick intro, and then you can correct me if I'm saying anything wrong. So, you're one of the co-founders of Top Dog Studios, which is an NFT or Web3 company building NFT projects. Your most well-known collection is the Top Dog Beach Club, which sold out when you launched it about a year ago. I believe you were one of the top NFT projects on what's it called again, on the OpenSea, which is an NFT marketplace. In that period when you launched, um, and well, the reason why I invited you on the podcast, I think all of that is interesting. I really want to talk about that because it's obviously an interesting subject. A lot of people are wondering what's going on with NFTs and just how do I get into that? What is it? How does it work? And you recently tweeted a Twitter thread about what's it really like to start a Web3 startup and how is it similar to a Web 2 or a regular business, right? So I'd love to talk a little bit more about that. What are the similarities and what are the differences? And just, I guess, for everyone to learn, everyone who's curious in this field to learn more about it. Did I introduce you sort of correctly, or would you correct me?
Yeah, no, that is correct. I'm Paul, co-founder of Top Dog Studios, which is, I guess, a Web3 agency. But our roots were actually founded in the project you mentioned. So before Top Dog Studios existed, it was Top Dog Beach Club and NFT collection.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
had sort of
Mm-hmm.
8,000 art pieces of some dogs, and we essentially sold those to raise some money and funds. Um, and then as we've progressed throughout the year and the team has grown, we've sort of evolved that into Top Dog Studios, where we now help other brands and other creators sort of enter and navigate the Web3 and the NFT space.
All right. Okay, very cool. We'll go more into that before we continue.
Mm.
A segment that I recently started doing to trigger a little bit of the curiosity from the listeners is, can you tell me two truths and one lie about your business or life? And then I'll try to guess which one is a lie, but don't tell me yet. You'll
Yeah,
tell me at
we
the end of the
struggled with you for
episode
that one
which one is the
a
lie.
second. Sorry, you cut out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
you
spoke about
couldn't.
this
Yeah.
recently just before we
Yeah.
went on live, and I was saying I hate these questions, but I actually thought of I thought of some good ones. So recently I got lost in Scotland and had to hike 30 kilometers over some mountains.
Okay.
I lost six figures in the recent lunar rug,
Uh huh.
and I once woke up on a beach in Mauritius after drinking. I was blackout drunk and had no idea how I got there.
You said you hate those questions. Those are wonderful examples. um. Oh man. Yeah, that's a difficult one, and I kind of want to hear a story of both of the truths, whichever they are. Well, I'm gonna say that the Luna rug is a lie. But let's see. Let's see. We'll get back to that when we approach the end of the episode. Um, Now, okay, let's start a little bit in the beginning. So I don't really know much about your background, and I know a little bit about what you're doing now, but just for a little bit of a background, like what got you into NFTs and into starting the Top Dog Beach Club collection?
Yeah, so my background is purely technical. I mean, since I was, I don't know, 12, 13 years old, I've always been interested in computing and sort of making things and breaking things. I guess always like wanted to start something and create something. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's like art in a way, isn't it? If you're a programmer or you're a coder or and you can make things by basically typing things into the computer, and to me that's kind of art and it's creative expression. I've always
Yeah.
enjoyed that. And throughout even just my career before NFTs, before Top Dogs, I was a programmer in gaming, in um, sort of ticketing and events, various different industries. Moved on to cybersecurity, and then I guess I got bored. And as I just mentioned, that NFTs and Web3, sort of this, I guess, bringing together of the tech side, then also the art side as well, the visual art side.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister-in-law is actually my co-founder, and she drew and illustrated all of the art for the project, because she's an artist, and it was just sort of a perfect combination of me on the tech side, her on the art side, and that's sort of how we started out. I was thinking actually the other day how I actually got involved in NFTs the first time, and I genuinely can't remember. I've always been involved in crypto since 2017, and
Uh-huh.
it must have just been through Twitter. I think I just saw people talking about NFTs and seeing posts and things what people are creating, and it just caught my attention because of that art and that tech sort of joining together.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay, I see. Okay, and then you partner with your co-founder, and what's the, those first steps? How did you start the business or the project?
Yeah, I guess we dipped our toes a little bit at first. So I discovered the NFTs first, and I created a few. Um, it was called My Pixel Planet, and it was algorithmically generated
Uh-huh.
planets.
Uh-huh.
And I sold a few of those. And I remember the first time that I sold one, I was like, "Oh my God, I sold this like piece of digital art, which is like I founded businesses before, but actually selling this piece of art
Mm-hmm.
that I made from code is something a bit different and special." And then I got my sister-in-law involved, and she created some really beautiful one-on-one pieces. And again, she started selling them, and then we thought we'd yeah, join up and create Top Dog Beach Club. And back then, I don't know if anybody's or you are familiar with the NFT world, but back then, um, I'm sure you've heard of Bored Ape Yacht Club, sort of one of
Yeah.
the biggest NFT
Yeah.
collections. Back then, they just launched, and then we were sort of behind the scenes as they launched. We were still working on our project and finishing the art
Uh-huh.
and things. And then we launched shortly after them. And I think at the same time, a lot of people had the same idea, and where they were creating their own projects and trying to raise funds, start their own sort of Web3 business. Um, but yeah, I distinctly remember as we was creating the project, more and more people were entering the space, and more projects were sort of getting created, and um, we were sort of a bit worried because we thought at the time the market was getting quite saturated because there was this, I don't know, two or three projects popping up every week,
Mm.
and now we see like 10, 20, 30 projects popping up every single day. But yeah, it was a really fun and exciting time because it was quite new and fresh back then.
Mm-hmm. And how see me it's this is going to be a funny episode because I know a little bit about NFTs, but I don't know a lot. I don't know a lot about art, so I might ask a lot of extremely beginner questions. But I suppose that is also the kind of subject where a lot of people don't know a lot about it. So
Mm.
maybe that's going to be fine. But how, even, the idea of why Top Dog Beach Club? Let me rephrase the question. So usually, most of the founders that I have on the podcast, their businesses are very different, right? So they're, I don't know, solving some very specific problem, right? And when I ask them like, why, how did you come up with the idea? They're like, well, I had that problem, or I was working for this business and they were having that problem, and I said, well, I can solve that, and that's how they started a business. Now,
Yeah.
this is obviously very different. So how do you get to that idea? How do you shape the idea? I suppose it's very artistic expression as well, but yeah, I would love to hear it from you.
Yeah, it is. It's really different because, like you said, you don't have this problem you're trying to solve for any sort of specific people. It's exactly like you said, it's creative expression. And I founded startups before, so I used to work in cybersecurity, and I founded two or three startups there. And again, that is, I have this problem. I'm going
Yeah.
to solve it by doing X, Y, and then you create a pitch deck and you go off and get funding, which is all pretty normal. Um, I guess this sort of stems from me finding those other businesses because I found it really difficult to raise funds,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially amount of substantial funds. And in Web3, this is just another way, essentially
Mm-hmm.
crowdfunding your business and crowdfunding a startup. And yeah, you're not particularly solving any problem, but you're creating a fun and immersive sort of experience. It's sort of like a private members club. So in London, we've
Mm-hmm.
obviously got like Soho House, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's sort of the vibe we're aiming for, created around these sort of fun dogs and these fun cats and this whole story and experience. And I guess it's why sort of films like Marvel and DC superhero films are really, really popular. And everyone loves a fun story. And that's what we're, I guess, trying to recreate.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I hear often. So in Web3, a lot of the value comes from the community, right? That's what's being talked about quite a lot on, the Web3 Twitter. That's at least where I get most of the knowledge and the understanding from, right? And how how do you create that? Or maybe a different way to ask that question would be, if I'm an owner of one of your NFTs, what's what do I get, right? So obviously I get the NFT, I get the JPEG, as everyone likes to talk about, but what else? What else do I get from that?
Yeah, there are different types of NFT, different categories, and I think as it started out, NFTs have actually been around for years and years. I think maybe 6, 7 years is the earliest sort of NFT that we
Was
had.
that
It's
the
it's just
CryptoPunks? Were CryptoPunks the first ones,
CryptoPunks
or?
2017, so 5 years ago. But even before that, there were um, NFTs which have sort of changed over the years.
Mm-hmm.
But they were originally about the art. So you are literally you look at the NFT, you look at the art, and you go, "Yep, I like that. I'm going to buy it," and that's it. That's all you get. You get that piece of art, as you traditionally would if you buy a painting or a canvas. That's how they were born. And then as they've evolved over time, people are adding what we call utility to them. So it sort
Mm-hmm.
of brings it back to this private members club that I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
So if you own a top dog or if you own any of the sort of utility based NFT, you get certain benefits. Um, like I said at the beginning, we've been around now for almost a year, just coming up to a year. So we've provided so much sort of utility over the years. We have games, people can play games, they can earn and win
Mm-hmm.
prizes. Like we've given away Lego Lamborghinis, we've given away VR headsets, iPads, like real prizes the community can win. We've had in real life events and meetups. So in
Uh-huh.
London last year, we had a pop up NFT gallery and we had champagne and canapes for holders to come along and just
Mm-hmm.
meet the community. We've all gone go karting, we've all gone to Copenhagen.
Huh.
There's a lot of sort of physical meetups and actually really connecting with the community and
Huh. Yeah.
making friends and things like that. Um, yeah, and then there's this whole sort of separate, I guess, speculation side of NFTs. A lot of people buy NFTs to make money, I guess. Let's
Mm-hmm.
not beat around the bush. That's why most people are buying NFTs in a hope to get a return on their investment,
Yeah.
which is kind of like stocks and shares in a way.
That's actually something that I really liked about your Twitter thread, because you were quite honest about that as well. You said, well, a lot of people say, yeah, it's just the art and it's just the community, but it's a business at the end of the world, right? At the end of the at the end of the day. It has to make money and you need to make profit, and that's at least part of the motivation in the whole NFT space as well. So we'll definitely get back to that as well. Um, okay, where should we go from here? I think maybe let's talk about your Twitter thread, and then
Mm-hmm.
let's see where the conversation goes. Maybe we'll come back to specifically to Top Dog Beach Club, because there are a bunch more questions that I have around that as well. Um, So you posted this Twitter thread recently. Maybe do you want to summarize it, and then we'll kind of go into some sub questions. I even copied some parts of it, and I just want to ask you some specific questions about some of the specific things that you said. But yeah, maybe you can just summarize it for everyone to, because I couldn't, right? So it's probably better you just say it in your own words.
Yeah, I mean, so it was just really a thread of, I think, 16, 17 posts of me just sharing my experiences and sort of challenges I faced in finding an NFT project and sort of transitioning that into a business. Because at the beginning, when we started this project, we didn't really envisage turning it into a full-time business. We didn't really know where it was going to go or how it was going to take off, because back then those types of utility-based projects were really, really new. So we had no idea where it was going. So it was just really sharing my experiences and things over the last year or so. And I guess some ugly truths about the space.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, a lot of scams and things going off. And yeah, I guess we'll talk about that a bit later.
Yeah, the scams are, yeah, that's something that a lot of people, that surfaces to the top, right? A lot of the media writes about that, so that's a lot of people see that and probably judge the NFT space a lot based on that, which we can definitely get to that in a few moments as well. So I'm gonna read, I have a few quotes from your Twitter thread, and maybe you can talk about some of those. So one thing that you wrote was, is that low floors are good for your project as it's cheaper to enter and has greater ROI potential for your community. Focus on increasing volume and the number of unique holders. The floor will follow. Now, this probably makes no sense to somebody who doesn't actually understand the terminology. I just realized now as I was reading that. I guess the way how I would explain that is like the floor price is that's the lowest price. No, is that the highest price of?
It's the cheapest NFT you can buy in a collection.
That's the
Yeah.
cheapest NFT in the collection. And so I said low price is good because people can buy it, and as the price goes up, the value is going to increase, and so if they sell it, they profit from it, right?
Yeah. So if you've
Yeah.
got a low floor, it's good for the project and healthy for the project, because it means more people are able to enter your project. So
Mm-hmm.
if your floor is $200, it's a lot more easy for somebody to enter versus $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
And also from an investment perspective for the buyer, I guess there's a higher return on investment for them, more potential return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
Because going from $200 to $5,000 is an X amount increase, but going from 5,000 to 10,000 is just doubled.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a good thing. You obviously want to have a floor that generally trends upwards,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, having a low floor, I think, is overall a good thing.
And then so you're obviously quite active, or how should I say, participate, as you've explained before, participating or being a holder of a Top Dog Beach Club NFT. There are a lot of benefits, right? There are a lot of things that are happening. I know that you guys have done, we definitely need to talk about that as well. You took I don't know what exactly it was, because I saw it on Twitter, but you took some of your NFTs somewhere really high up north and locked it into a vault or something. Maybe can you just explain that for the context?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty crazy. It's one of the most crazy things we've done. Um, I'll backtrack a little bit. So with NFTs, there's a problem. Um, so if you think of an NFT, most people will sort of hear the word blockchain and it's stored on the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
And most people will think that that is permanent and it's going to outlive everybody, because the blockchain is fully decentralized and it's all over the world and it runs on thousands and thousands and thousands of computers and no one controls it, which is kind of true. But when you buy an NFT, I don't know if you've heard the expression of, when you buy an NFT, you're buying a receipt. Have you
Not
heard
the
that?
actual thing. No, I'm not sure what that means. No.
So a lot of people say that, and it's sort of true. I don't agree with it. It's sort of true because when you buy an NFT, all you are buying is on the blockchain. There's a record that says Matisse, his wallet address, whatever that may be, owns token ID number one,
Mm-hmm.
and that is it. That is all that's on the blockchain. The NFT itself, the image, the art, the piece of music, the game asset, the hat, whatever it may be, is actually stored outside of the blockchain. So it's stored on Web 2.0, which
Mm-hmm.
can
Mm-hmm.
be
Mm-hmm.
on the Google Cloud, it can be on the Amazon Cloud, it can be on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook, on Twitter, wherever. There's a sort of basically the NFT points to a link somewhere on the internet, and
Yeah.
because it's a link, it can disappear. So if Google or Amazon don't agree with that particular art or that NFT, they can delete it. If the project founders stop paying their Amazon bill, their cloud bill, then it can just disappear and turn into a
Mm-hmm.
404 page. Um, and the University of California carried out some research earlier this year, and 56% of all NFTs that have been created have basically turned into 404 pages.
Oh
So
wow.
if you can imagine buying an NFT for $100, $500, $1,000, and then a month or two later, it turns into a very expensive 404 page.
Oh wow. Which
Um,
yeah, I mean, 100%
it's
can be
really
just
common.
because of what you said before. Maybe just the project didn't go well. The founders didn't have the money to pay for the hosting bills, and
Yeah,
puff, it's gone.
exactly. And um, yeah, so we're trying to, so Top Dog Studios are trying to solve that. And one of the ideas we've got and the project we've worked on is called the Non-Fungible Vault. And we partnered with some of the biggest projects out there and the biggest artists, Fuck Render, Mad Dog Jones, Boss Beauties, Trevor Jones, all these big, big names. And we've essentially taken all of their art, all of their NFTs, and we've stored them on film, so like old photographic film, so 45
Mm-hmm.
mil film, and we've sort of etched the NFTs and the data onto that film, and then we've stored them in the Arctic World Archive, which is a special facility in the Arctic, um, which is I think 450, 440 meters below a decommissioned coal mine in a mountain.
Oh wow.
And the idea, yeah, sounds crazy. And the idea is that the medium and the way it's stored and where it's stored means it's going to be safe and protected for 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that currently sits alongside uh, the manuscripts from the Vatican Library, scientific sort of research and breakthroughs from NASA and the ESA, and just all this culturally significant and important information that humans have created. The idea is just we want to save that to make sure it can be enjoyed by future generations to come. Like NFTs aside, at the end of the day, an NFT is a piece of art. It's something that we have created, that a human has created, and I think it's worth saving that.
Really interesting. So I just had this thing come to my mind how eventually we discovered all these paintings on inside of the caves from probably like hundreds of thousands of years ago. I don't know actually how long ago, right? And I mean, maybe that's how somebody's gonna discover your art in hundreds of thousands of years or whatever it's gonna be. I mean, nobody knows how long our civilization is gonna exist, right? Things happen. Elon Musk keeps warning us that things can happen to the world, things can happen to the planet. Really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Picasso or Leonardo da Vinci, like some of their paintings went missing, and they've only sort of recently been, not recently, but relatively recently, just been found. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so look, that's for example, that's one interesting thing, which I suppose it also adds value to the project, right?
Yeah, it does. I guess if you're a collector and you're spending thousands of pounds on these NFTs, then you want them to be safe and secure.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a holder of a top dog, you can put whatever you want in there to make sure it's safe. We actually
Mm-hmm.
had a like a whiteboard, and people could write messages on there to store as well, which is quite nice.
Okay, very interesting. So the reason why I asked was we talked about the floor price and the price eventually increasing, and you're doing all these things that this is was one of the examples, and then you mentioned games, and there's like community events and so on and so forth. What else are NFT projects in general doing or can do to increase the price, right? Because that is, I suppose, the direction that they all try to go, or especially if you're an investor, or especially if you invest just to profit, then that's what you want. And I think a lot of, there's a lot of, or at least it seems like there's a lot of gambling, right? Or that there's this, well, they got good vibes, so I'm gonna buy their JPEGs. Again, those are just like jokes that are flying around Twitter, so that I hear all the time.
It's true. It's exactly true, and I've done that myself as an investor and a collector. I've seen something on Twitter and saw the hype and the FOMO, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna buy it quick, quick. And sometimes it works, sometimes it hasn't. And there's so much going on in this space, and there's so many projects launching. Like I said, you just don't have the time to look into all of the projects, look at all of their fundamentals, look at the team. So sometimes you have to take a chance on these things. But I mean, as our community and what we try to do, obviously we want the price to go up because we genuinely care about our community, and we've genuinely made friends. We regularly meet up with 5 or 6, 7 people from our community who are in London. And we had dinner with 16, 17 people just last week. So we care about them. They're our friends. So we want them to benefit as well. And yeah, it's always an uphill battle because you're always thinking in the back of your head, like, how can I, or how can we, what can we do to sort of, I guess, create that hype and make that sort of price go up and bring in new holders and new buyers to the project. And it's really, really, really difficult out there because you're competing with so many different projects. There's so many out there now. Like, I can literally name hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of really, really good projects with really good teams. So you've got to think out of the box and what we can do differently. Which is where the Vault came in. Like, nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is trying to solve that problem, and that helped. And at the time when we launched, it was common for projects and founders to be anonymous, like completely 100% anonymous. Even the Bored Ape team, when they launched, they were completely anonymous. And we thought at the time, actually, let's change this and let's set a precedent of accountability and becoming what we call docs, to being non-anonymous. And we purposely put our faces out there and the whole team and said, hey, this is us. We're fully accountable. We're not going to take your money and run off. Here we are. We're accountable to you. And now that's now commonplace. But it's things like that. It's finding those little, I guess it's similar to any business, right? You've got to find those little niches and those little, I guess, what makes you stand out, your USPs.
Is that now? So the project is live, it's trading. You've got members or customers, if you will. Is that your main job right now, yours and the job of your team, to come up with ideas to keep adding value to the project, to keep creating or keeping the hype up, to just find different ideas to add more value to it?
Yeah, essentially. Everything we do, everything we come up with, always in the back of mind, we always ask the question, how is this going to add value to the project? Or is it going to add value? Yeah, I mean, everything we do is that question in mind. And we're brainstorming every single day, working on new ideas and new, I guess, features and things like that. Yeah.
Because I feel like there are a lot of people out there who came up with, they were like, well, NFTs are hot right now. I'm going to get a designer. They're going to design a bunch of images and we're going to sell them and I'm going to make a lot of money and that's it. The end, right? but it doesn't, from what you're explaining, it doesn't seem like that at all, right? There's like, that's just the beginning. It's like, okay, you saw that, now you're on this journey of, well, we need to keep the value up, we need to keep maintaining it and upgrading it, I suppose.
Yeah, we've said this to community, and I'd fully admit we didn't quite realize how much full-on work it is. We sort of had this idea and this concept, and we just sort of see where it'd go. And we're so happy where it has gone, and we're forever grateful. But yeah, I guess there are two different types of projects. They're called rug pulls, so where they would put the art out there, they would sell these tokens, these NFTs, 1,000 of them, 5,000, 10,000, whatever it may be, collect a few $1 million in mint revenue, and then essentially disappear and not.
But then the value drops, right?
Yeah, which is why it's called a rug pull, because that value drops, and then essentially everybody that's brought an NFT is then left what we call holding the bag. It's worthless essentially. And there's a lot of those, like I mentioned before. There's a lot of scams happening and what's said rug pulls, and unfortunately they're really, really common because, like I said, people don't have the time to fully look into all of these projects, so they can get caught up in a rug. I've been rugged a few times. I've lost money. It's really difficult out there. And then there are the projects that are genuinely here to stay and have been building since they launched. Obviously, we are one of those as well. We've been here for a year, and we're here every single day. We're growing a team, we're building and working on new things and constantly adding value.
So there are a few sub questions I have to this. One, well, you just mentioned your team. What kind of skill sets do you have on the team right now? How's your team kind of structured? What is an NFT project? How does an NFT project team look like?
So we started off just me and Abby, my co-founder. So she was the artist. So I did all the tech side when we launched. Abby obviously did all the art. And then we slowly brought in, we knew at the time we wanted to create a lot of utility and sort of push the boundaries of tech innovation in Web3. So we made a conscious effort to be tech and dev heavy. So at the minute we have 4 devs on the team, and they're constantly building out new things. We've got, obviously Abby's still on the team as artist. We've got an accounts team, we've got a legal team. We've got, we had a marketing person as well, but we've just let them go just last week. So we're rehiring for that role. I guess it doesn't really look any different. Yeah, exactly. I guess it doesn't really look any different from a normal Web2 business. You obviously have the niche skill sets of people need to know about blockchain and crypto and NFTs, but generally it looks quite similar. I mean, at the end of the day, the NFT is our product, so it requires all of the marketing and sales and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I suppose it's actually more tech heavy than I would initially expect, right? There's a lot of kind of tech happening in the background. I suppose you mentioned a game before, so I suppose that's one of the things that the devs are building.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are quite unique in that. Like I said, we are very tech heavy. I don't think the majority of projects are like that. Which is why we brought out the Top Dog Studios side, so you can hear my dog barking in the background.
Your top dog barking in the background.
Sorry, what was I saying? So we are quite unique in having a tech-heavy team. I don't think every team has that, but that was a conscious effort because we've built out the Top Dog Studio side where we help other brands and other projects get on board into the space.
Is that part of how you are financing it as well? So that's an interesting subject which you touched on a little bit in the beginning, right? You said, well, you have the initial sale, which generates some funding, and I believe, well, those numbers are public anyways, right? Like how much money do you? Because when you have the initial sale, that money goes to you, right? That money goes to the project owner, to the business, right?
Yeah, it goes to the business. So yeah, it's on the blockchain. It's open and transparent, and
Yeah,
anyone can
yeah.
see the numbers fairly easy. So we raised 1.2, 1.3 million US dollars
Okay, yeah.
from the sale of the NFT, and obviously that's gone into the business of hiring people and marketing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
essentially given us our runway for the year.
Mm-hmm.
But we have quickly realized, or at least learned over the last year or so. So you have your original mint money that gives you the runway you need, but then you obviously need a recurring revenue stream coming in to
Yeah,
continue supporting and growing the business, just like
yeah,
any other business.
yeah.
And that in the NFT world, that happens through secondary sales. So every time
Mm-hmm.
we sell a top dog, or anytime someone buys one, we get 5% of that sale.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that's sort of keeping I guess, the business ticking over.
Mm-hmm.
But for us to grow from the plans we have, we obviously need more funding, um, which again is where the Top Dog Studio side comes in as well. So we don't want to be purely reliant on those NFT revenues, secondary sale revenues, because in a bear market, so when the crypto's down and the stock markets are down and nobody's buying NFTs or nobody's buying Ethereum or Bitcoin,
Or
then
anything, really.
yeah, or anything basically, yeah, we don't have we can't rely on those royalties,
Mm-hmm.
so we have to sort of expand out, which is
Mm-hmm.
what we've done. Um, yeah, I guess I mean, like I said, it's like any other business. It's having multiple products, multiple revenue streams.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And kind of one thing that I often see in bootstrapped businesses, right? So businesses that didn't raise any venture funding, is that they're building a product, but they're financing it by offering a service, and that's a little bit what you're doing on the side as well, right? It's like, well, you have the Top Dog Studios where you're selling essentially a service, consulting other projects, helping them get off the ground, and you're using that revenue to then finance the development of the Top Dog Beach Club, or yeah, your own projects. There was one part of your tweet that I was actually related to that, and I saved that as well. You wrote, do not solely rely on your collection's secondary sale revenue. Think how you can add more revenue streams such as merch, consulting, licensing. So that's essentially what you were saying now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we've sold some merch, but it's been successful, but not something we can rely on as a revenue stream for forever.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just one example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Another one is we started out as Top Dog Beach Club. We had the product of the dogs, and then later, I think it was October last year, we added a second collection, so Top Cat Beach Club, which
Uh-huh.
is some cats as well. So we have the revenue of that collection coming in. Yeah, I mean, it's always, I guess, an uphill battle of diversifying the business and having
Yeah.
those separate revenue streams.
Just exactly as you said, just like any other business, pretty much.
Yeah, there's a lot of synergies. I think people see the word Web3 or crypto or NFT, and it sounds complicated and really difficult, but I think it's just generally like any other business. The only
Mm,
difference is the markets can be really volatile, really, really volatile. So you need to plan for
mm-hmm.
those. And then also I guess the initial funding is just crowdsourced,
Yeah, yeah,
um, which is kind of like Kickstarter in a way, I guess, and Patreon and those
yeah,
kind of things.
yeah. There are. It's really interesting now as we're talking. I'm, realizing myself how there are so many similarities with a Web 2 or any sort of business, which I was not aware of before, and which is really why I'm really loving this conversation. I think it's probably very basic for anyone who's been in the NFT space for a long time, but I think a lot of people are gonna appreciate it because they're probably at kind of my level of understanding. So, clarifying the similarities, I think it makes it easier to understand.
Yeah. And if people are thinking of creating a project or entering this space to raise funds, then yeah, I mean, you need those USPs and those niches now. It's so difficult to. I think we were quite lucky in a way because when we launched last year, it was a bit easier. But now it's so difficult to even get some traction and sell out. Never mind about that secondary sale market.
There was one point that was kind of related to what we were talking about. So in your Twitter thread, you said your core full-time team should be getting a percentage of your secondary sale royalties just as they would get shares in a startup. So I thought that was also a very interesting point, right? It's something that I've never heard of before, never thought of before. It's very common in startups. But I guess that makes sense to keep the team motivated and aligned, right? That the incentives are aligned.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've done from day one. Our core team, so Pete, Andrew, Jakob, our devs, they get a percentage of the secondary sale royalties, and it's just something that we, believed in. That they've just basically been with us from the start. They should, just like a startup, get a percentage of that to incentivize them and stick with us through those difficult times and those bad markets. And I didn't quite realize a lot. I would say the majority of projects that I've spoken to, and I don't know, maybe 85-90% don't do that, which I thought was crazy. The founders keep it for themselves and they don't share it along the rest of the team, which surprised me a lot.
Very interesting. It does, again, yeah, it makes a lot of sense now when you said it, and when you make a comparison with startups. Never heard of it before though.
If you create an NFT project, before you start selling your products, before you start selling those NFTs, there's all this work that goes on in the background, and it can take 2 or 3 months to do that work, and you need to pay your team members. And if you're completely bootstrapped like we were, you can't sort of pay them in large sums of money. So like a startup, you promise them percentages of the secondary sale or percentages of the mint.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. Another point that you made, and you touched on that already a little bit a few minutes ago, you wrote, minting out is hard, but having a healthy secondary market is 10 times harder. First, again, maybe you can just explain that point, because again, there's a lot of vocabulary there that might not be super clear. And then my second question is, what can you do as a NFT project founder, or maybe you can just explain on your own example or talk about other examples as well, to increase that or to improve that, to get that sale going, both in the beginning, but maybe especially later on, right? I think we talked about it a little bit, but maybe there's a different angle.
Yeah, so minting out essentially means selling your NFT. So when you buy an NFT, it's called a mint. So it's selling out your initial product. So if you put 8,000 out there, minting out means selling out all of those 8,000. And like I said, that's really, really difficult to do. And I think it's getting more and more difficult. We're working with a number of projects on the Top Dog Studio side. And again, it just comes back to that USP and finding that niche. As an example, we're working with a new project called The Sellouts, and their product and their NFT is focused around a band. So they have sort of singers and drummers and guitarists. And their USP and their niche, which is really going to help them sell out, is on the microphones or on the band members' t-shirts or the drum skin, there's this space for advertisement. And they're essentially partnering with musical instrument makers and recording artists and other people in the industry to sort of advertise on their NFTs, which has never been done before. That's so unique and it's a huge USP. And the idea is that you get the revenue. If you own one of these NFTs, and let's say let's say you have one of these NFTs, Matisse, and you put it as your Twitter profile picture, and then you're hugely popular on Twitter and you've got a big following. I could then put place an advert on your sort of Twitter picture.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you would
Okay.
get a share of the revenue stream from that advertising, which is really, really cool. So really just finding ways to stand out and be different. I think people are dying for a really, really good immersive story. I don't think anyone's really fully nailed that yet. I mean, ourselves included. Sort of branching across, animation and I guess sort of going the Disney, Netflix route. Using the IP and that brand that you create to sort of create a whole immersive world across various verticals. I think that could work really, really well.
Is that where the metaverse is going, or where the metaverse kind of enters the picture?
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's interesting. Yeah, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, and then the secondary market. So you've let's say you've minted out, and then you've sold, your 1,000, 8,000, 10,000 NFTs. That's one thing, and then you have to work, I guess, 10x harder to actually get that secondary sale market moving. Because then that's where your community make their profit, and that's where the secondary sale royalties come in for the business. And doing that, it's just a marketing game. You just need to create that hype and that FOMO and keep adding that value.
As again, it is the case in most of the other businesses as well, and I talk about that, or we have conversations about that on the podcast quite often. How the product is important, but the marketing is usually more important than the product itself, right? If you can have a brilliant product without marketing, it's not going to sell. On the other side, you can have an average product with good marketing, it's going to sell.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing that we didn't really fully appreciate when we first started out. Is we think we know we've got this great product, the whole community knows it, and it's just the marketing side. Like the whole team, because we're quite technical, the whole team for us marketing is this magical black box that nobody knows how it sort of works. But over the last 3 months or so, we've been hiring people to help us with that and outsourcing help and things like that. But yeah, marketing is the number one thing that I wish we focused on earlier and brought in, I guess. Well, I was about to say experts, brought in a marketing expert. Actually, I don't think there truly is any NFT marketing experts. There's a lot of people that claim to be, but they're just talking shit and it's a load of scams.
What is sort of the end goal? So if we talk about lifestyle business, the goal is just, run the business, make enough profit to live the lifestyle you want to live. And I suppose that's it. If we talk about venture-backed business, it's usually we're going after an acquisition or an IPO. What is it usually? I mean, you can talk about, again, either your own case or some other cases. We have seen some acquisitions happening. I think the big one was Yuga Labs, which is the company that created Bored Ape Yacht Club. They acquired CryptoPunks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
For how much? Do you remember how much that was? It was like enormous amounts of money.
A couple $100 million. I can't remember exactly, but it was a crazy amount of money. Yeah.
It was a lot of money.
We're definitely going to be seeing more and more of that. Like now, more big companies, VCs are entering the space and they're going to be buying brands. Like Nike purchased Artifact. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but they purchased their RFKT.
Yeah,
I can't remember the acronym.
it rings a bell. It rings a bell. I don't know much about them though. I didn't know that they got acquired.
Yeah, but Nike brought them out, and we're going to see a lot of that coming this year, I think. And to answer your question, we're sort of doing the same. So I think when we first launched, and the 6, 7, 8 months following, it was exactly just like you said. We obviously need to live, so we need to earn a living. The team needs to earn a living, and that was a sort of goal. But now, over the last 3 months or so, we want to grow. We've got all these big ideas, and we just need additional funding for that. So we are actually seeking VC investment, and we're trying to raise some money and do a seed round. Yeah. I guess our goal is not really to get acquired, but our goal is at the minute to raise those funds and make sure we can grow and expand.
Got it. What do you think? So we talked a little bit before about you need to find, you need to differentiate, you need to find your unique selling point. There are various ways of doing that. For example, I think WeFriends is one of the big, enormously successful examples, which I think it's probably largely successful because Gary Vee is behind it, right? And he's a, famous guy, exceptional marketer as well. So that obviously helps.
Yeah.
And I think he kind of created the whole community around the things that he's generally good at. So that makes sense. But what about Bored Ape Yacht Club? So they were a more early NFT, arguably from the examples that I know, it's probably one of the most successful projects ever created, or at least in the top 3, top 5. What's their story? What actually made them so successful?
I think you touched upon it. They were essentially the first utility-based project. So before Bored Apes, there were CryptoPunks and there were various other projects. But it was, you just buy this NFT and then you get the art, and that's it. But they were the first ones to add the utility to it. So you buy this NFT, you get the art, but then you also get XYZ. I think at the beginning they were giving away ETH, so they were giving away money and prizes, and what they did really well, I think, is create this story and sense of community. They delivered that in a really, really well, really good way.
I mean, just the naming is smart, I suppose. It's like, I think the naming was kind of aligned with the narrative of, aping. Well, was aping in the term before the Bored Ape Yacht Club came out?
It was.
Or what?
Yeah.
So that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of makes sense, right? So it aligns with that narrative, and then Yacht Club, like, who doesn't want to be a member of a Yacht Club? And it sounds like the whole strategy behind it was sounds clever, but yeah, I don't know much more about it personally.
Yeah, I mean, they really just position themselves of, you're not buying the art, you are buying this membership token, which comes back to me talking about sort of Soho House. You feel like a part of a private members club and community.
Yeah.
And I think it was sort of compounded by Corona and sort of lockdowns and things like that. People were just at home bored. So I think that's why it sort of, the timing was right and the product was right. I think they just killed it.
I mean, the membership model or the private club model, that's probably centuries old model. So it kind of makes sense, right? As crazy as it might sound to somebody, it is a tested model, just done differently, right? Done with the technology and I guess in the society that we live in right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Which kind of brings me to the next question, which is, what do you think, where do you think the world of NFTs is going? What's going to happen in a year or 3 years or 5 years, which is probably a really hard question, because I mean, predicting the future in general is not an easy thing, and things might go completely different directions. But there are some hypotheses, I suppose, in the space. There's a board. There's a cool cat coming into the picture. Yeah, where do you think that's going? And maybe even outside of just the typical collector art space, because I think NFTs from what I'm hearing, could be used in many different ways as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, you might have seen it on Twitter. A lot of people in the community say we are so early,
Mm.
and it's true, and we are really, really early. Um, like I said, NFTs have actually been around for quite a while, but the number of users using them and the NFT we sort of know today, like utility membership based NFT, has only
Mm-hmm.
really been around for the last year. So we're
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really early. Um, and yeah, ultimately, an NFT is just a new digital asset. Um, and if you sort of think, about children and kids growing up, as soon as they're, 2, 3 years old, they've got an iPad in their hand and they're playing games. And I've got friends with kids who are spending ridiculous amounts of money in Fortnite and Roblox and all these games. And it's because to them, digital identity is just as important, or if not more important, than their
Yeah.
physical identity. So in
Yeah.
a game, they want to be wearing the latest jacket that's cool, or the latest hat that's cool. And the way that's going to work in the future is they're going to be all based on NFTs. So if you buy a hat in Fortnite, that's going to be a digital asset, it's going to be an NFT. And then maybe you can use that hat also in a different game or a different metaverse. It's essentially what a metaverse is at the minute, a sort of game. Um, People are going to be trading them and swapping them, and people are going to be paying a high, incredibly amount of money for them. I know, high fashion brands are entering this space purely for that
Mm-hmm.
reason, for digital
Mm-hmm.
identity. And
Mm-hmm.
Gucci, Louis Vuitton, all these big brands are selling virtual digital handbags for 3, 4, 5 times the price as a physical one, which is crazy. It sort of makes no sense if you think about it. Um, but from a
Luxury
business perspective,
status. Mm.
yeah, exactly. People want to flex. Why do people buy a 10, 20 grand Rolex?
Mm.
Exactly the same reason why people are spending $250,000 on a Bored Ape profile picture. It's
Mm.
digital identity, and it's digital flex.
It's a
Um,
centuries old business model,
yeah,
just in a new
yeah,
world. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Um, and I think that's where it's going. Obviously, the metaverse, digital identity. Um, one problem that's not been solved at the minute, which hopefully gets solved soon, and I think the person that does solve it, or at least the people that do solve it, is going to make a shit ton of money, and that is the interoperability of NFTs. So at the minute, if you purchase an NFT, um, so the most popular metaverses we have at the minute are called Sandbox and Decentraland. I'm not sure if you've
Mm-hmm.
heard of
I've
them.
heard of them. Yeah.
The two of the most popular. The We released some pink hats that have got the Ethereum logo on them,
Mm-hmm.
and we essentially had to create two NFTs for both of the
Aha.
platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So if I buy one of these hats for Sandbox, I then have to go buy it for Decentraland as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you can sort of, if someone figures out how, okay, I'm going to buy this hat, and it is also wearable and usable in Sandbox and in Decentraland, and I only have to buy it once,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be really, really powerful, and I think that's what's going to start getting people buying more and more digital items. The same with a watch. If I buy a watch in one game or a jacket in one game, I wanted to use it in another game. Um, that can be quite powerful. And then I think for the space to grow generally, the NFT space, the Web3 space, we spoke about it today already. There's a lot of scams happening, and
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're a newcomer into the space, it can be really, really scary. And there's all these new concepts and all these technology terms and things and acronyms to understand. And somebody who nails the education, improving the user experience, and increasing security, again, is going to be, I think, do very, very well in this space. Um, there's lots of ideas rattling around in my head on how to sort of stop people getting scammed and people's NFTs stolen.
Uh-huh.
If we make that easy, and if we whoever does that, I think is going to make a lot of money.
Did you say there are a lot of ideas that you have or that exist, but nobody really executed on that yet?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ideas. It's sort of, so the minute what happens is a lot of high profile NFTs are getting stolen because people are being phished. So the scammers are reaching out to people who own a Bored Ape or these expensive NFTs, sort of creating some sort of story like, I want to buy your ape, I'm going to pay you $300,000. Can we trade? And here's a trading link. And then clicking that link sort of steals their NFT. And I used to work in cybersecurity, so there's a lot of, I guess, principles we can apply from that industry into Web3, and just, I guess, protecting those assets. One thing I've not really seen, which I think is going to take off, or at least I don't see why it wouldn't take off, is insurance. Because at the minute, if you lose money, and if your car gets stolen, you've obviously got insurance, and you claim on your insurance, you're going to be okay. If your NFT gets stolen, there's no bank or central authority or anything like that can help you. It's just gone, and there's nothing you can do. But I think if insurance can somehow work and apply to that, that could be really, really successful.
Fascinating. That is kind of mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I mean that whole sort of the decentralized concept, a lot of people want and rave about, and it's great, but there's massive trade-offs. And those same people that are saying we want decentralization, then they get hacked and their Bored Ape gets stolen, and then they're like messaging OpenSea, please do something, I want my ape back. But it's decentralized, nobody can do anything.
Very cool. Well, those sound like some very solid ideas that, given where the technology and the world is going, it sounds like, somebody will need to solve them. That they are, a lot of what you mentioned is criticism that I've heard about as well, criticism of the crypto world or the NFT space, right? And just like I'm sure that there was a lot of criticism of the early internet, which a lot of people are making those comparisons as well, right?
Yeah.
The early internet was hard to use. It was probably unsafe, not good looking, a bunch of issues.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having dial-up modem back in the sort of 90s, and the internet was ugly, and all the phishing emojis to get, and it's exactly the same, and I make the same comparisons. And we're going to follow the same trajectory. Like, there's going to be improvements in UX, improvements in education and security, and then all these we're seeing it already. All these big companies are going to get involved and just drop a crap load of money in the space, and it's just NFTs are the future. And I think anyone who likes technology and wants to get involved should get involved.
Very cool. Okay. I suppose that brings us towards the end of the podcast. Before we wrap up, you still need to tell me what was the lie?
Yeah, you got it right. You got it right. It was the Luna.
Did I? Thank God. Good. I'm happy for you.
If that was the truth, I would have whispered it so my wife couldn't hear.
Okay, so you didn't lose money in the Luna disaster that happened. For anyone who's interested in that, just Google Luna crypto. I'm sure there are plenty of news articles and threads out there about that. But it sounds like you had some fun travel stories. Or what are the other two things? You got lost. You woke up randomly in some random place.
Yeah, I was in Scotland just last week actually, and we were supposed to climb Ben Nevis, the highest mountain in the UK. But the route was like 9 kilometers.
Yeah.
We just somehow got lost twice and ended up completely wrong and having to do 30 kilometers uphill and downhill.
Oh wow.
And my legs still hurt now. Killing. It was awful. Yeah, not a good time.
But a good story at least.
A good story, yeah. Good story.
Very cool. Was there anything else that we forgot to cover? Do you think there's anything else that we, I don't know, either from your thread or anything that you'd like to share?
I think if anybody's listening and they're thinking of starting a Web3 business or even just an NFT project, find somebody that's got skin in the game already and that's been in this space, and bring them on board as an advisor, just to help you navigate, because there's so many sort of twists and turns and things you really need to think about. Your technology and your smart contract blockchain code has to be on point. If it's wrong, it can kill your project. An example is a friend of mine worked on a project called AccuDreams, and they had a smart contract error and bug, and they essentially lost $27 million. It was gone.
Wow.
Yeah, and it didn't kill the project because the community was so strong, but the whole team lost all of their initial funding. So it's making sure you've got all those kind of things in place.
So that's an expensive mistake that can happen. A very expensive mistake.
Yeah, and it comes back to this decentralization. If you get it wrong, it can't be changed, and you can't go to anyone. It's just what it is.
A lot of risks, but a lot of room for innovation and for new exciting projects. So I guess the risk-reward ratio works as it does generally in the world. So
yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Paul, I really enjoyed the conversation. I wish I would have listened to this kind of episode a year ago, or that I would have recorded it, because I've certainly learned a whole lot about NFTs today and about Web3 businesses in general. So I really appreciate you coming on. I hope that everyone else is going to enjoy it as well. If you did listen until the end, just let me know what you thought. Leave a comment or send me a message. I love reading those messages just to hear what you think. And yeah, we're going to wrap it up now. Thanks again. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Take care.